Hi, I'm so excited to be here today to share with you things I've learned in my years as a product manager, as a founder, and as a scientific researcher, way back in the beginning of my career. Um, so I'm here to tell you about how to make evidence-based product decisions. And I'm Holly Hester-Reilly, founder and CEO of H2R Product Science. So I believe that the best products are made when the risky decisions from stories to strategy are backed by evidence. The risky decisions. Not every single decision has to be an A/B test or an elaborate experiment, but the risky ones should be backed by evidence. However, making evidence-based product decisions is hard. A lot of you have probably done it. A lot of you have probably tried. You've probably run experiments. You probably tried A/B testing, maybe usability tests and customer interviews. But actually figuring out from there how to make a good decision for your product has a lot of things that get in the way, such as deciding which of the data to follow. Have any of you ever been in a situation where you were in a room full of people and everybody had a different opinion about what the data meant, or which pieces of data to look at, or what time period? That can be pretty tricky. There's also listening to customers and having them say different things. So if the customers are telling you something different, you talk to one customer and they say, I need it to be like this, and another customer says that'll never work for me. What do you do? And how do you make a good decision going forward from there? Of course, there's the ever-present HIPPO, highest paid person's opinion. So sometimes somebody up top has a big ego or is caught up in what their favorite ideas are, and it can be really hard to dissuade them, even if you have evidence. Another problem we see a lot is shiny object syndrome. So somebody in the company, maybe you, maybe a team member, might get really excited about something new that looks promising, but just jump from shiny object to shiny object without staying focused. And one of my favorites, especially in larger companies, is sort of innovation theater. It's the idea that we're just doing these things to say that we're being innovative, but at the end of the day, maybe it never makes it out to the customer or into the product. Another common challenge is Me Too product development. So you might be saying the evidence says this, and somebody else says, well, I see, our competitor is doing this thing, and therefore, we need to build that too. And they just put a bunch of things on the roadmap, and you maybe have a hard time pushing back. So you end up spending a lot of time playing catch up to what a competitor is doing. The sales team can come and tell you everything that they've heard in the sales conversations, but while that's really valuable, a lot of times the sales team is not well trained in customer discovery and in understanding how to parse out what a customer says they want from what the customer really needs and how to build for that customer. So sometimes that can really make things difficult too. And similarly, having a really strong marketing team is very promising and helpful, but sometimes the marketing team will really try to drive exactly what goes into the product, again, with more of a angle on what gets those first acquisitions than on what drives the long-term value. And finally, the customers themselves, you might be doing usability tests, you might be talking to people, and they say, yes, I like it. This is something that I want to use, or I think I would use. And then you build that product and you roll it out and you think, I did this based on what the customer asked for, but they don't use it. Why does that happen? Why do all of these things happen? And how do we get past them? That's what I want to talk about with how to make evidence-based product decisions. So the most important thing is to keep in mind this one rule. The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. This comes from Richard Feynman. He's a Nobel Prize-winning physicist and often evangelizes the scientific method. Oh, my cat's here. All right, so So how do you make evidence-based product decisions? The first thing that you want to do is get a really clear picture of what does success look like for this product. What are you going after? What does it mean for the company? What does it mean for your team? What are the business objectives you're trying to achieve? And what are the product objectives you're trying to achieve? Excuse my cat. Sorry. Okay. All right. So you want to understand what your boss's objectives are. You want to understand what your boss's objectives are. This will help you in making decisions about which things to pursue and which things not to pursue. And then you want to run experiments, or you want to gather evidence. Sometimes when I say run experiments, people think I just mean doing A/B tests or testing prototypes. But I also mean other kinds of gathering evidence. I also mean talking to customers, having discovery interviews with customers where you're not showing them something to test and get feedback on, and you're just asking them questions and talking about them and their past experiences. I also mean looking at the product data, looking at the things that are going on in the market and any data you can find in the market. There's a lot of different ways to gather evidence, and we will talk about those as well. One of the things that I love to share is a way of bringing it all together that I call the product science principles. There's these 3 principles, and the first one is you need an evidence-based product strategy. So a lot of what I've been talking about comes down to actually having a strategy, having an idea of where you're going, so that you can map this feedback that you're getting and the pushes that you get from different people inside the company back to whether it aligns with the product strategy that you have. And that product strategy needs to be based on evidence, because it is a risky decision deciding what your strategy is. Then we have continuous discovery and delivery. That's where you're really continuously doing experiments, you're continuously talking to customers, and of course, you're continuously shipping software as well. That's how you make sure that you're doing work that aligns with the product strategy with evidence to back it up. And finally, you need empowered teams. Without empowered teams, the rest of this isn't going to work, because you need the team to be able to make the quick decisions on the ground with the context that they need to move forward with the information from the continuous discovery and delivery towards the evidence-based product strategy. So when you have all 3 of these things together, you can really drive evidence-based product decisions that drive high growth products. So what does that look like? One of the ways that I like to do this is with product opportunity assessments. I have a particular framework for product opportunity assessments that I want to share with you. It's a lightweight way of looking at what's going to be a good opportunity for your product. The first part is to start with users. I always start with users because I find that if you start with the business opportunity or the market, it's too easy to get rose-colored glasses. It's too easy to think that you know what's going to work when you might have evidence against the contrary, and their confirmation bias about this is going to work can get in the way. So we start with users, and when we start with users, we're able to stay focused on individuals and what they need and what they do and what motivates their behavior. So you want to look at what gets them excited, what makes them feel like winners. When in their lives do they feel like things are going really well? Those, of course, are going to be experiences they're going to want to replicate. You also want to understand what makes them pull their hair out. When do they get so frustrated that they would really be willing to make a change in the way that they're behaving? Once you have that understanding, then you can go on to exploring the market. You want to understand how many people there are like the customers that you found that were good fits for your product. So if you talk to 5 customers and 3 of them are a good fit for your product, they have the problems that you're trying to solve, they want the same outcomes that you're trying to drive towards, and 2 of them aren't, well, that's only 5 customers. So now you need to understand, are those representative of the larger market? And that's where you want to do some work to try and size that up. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail right now as to how to do that. I do believe that you don't have to be so rigorous as the largest companies with the big marketing research budgets will often be very rigorous about this. If you're in a small scrappy company or on a team that doesn't have access to that, that's okay. But you can still try to get some directional information about the size of the segments of the market. You can try to get some information from things like pop-up quizzes on your site that just ask one question at an opportune time. You could send email surveys out. You could look at existing data and model who's likely to match certain things. You could add onboarding questions to when new customers sign up. There's a lot of ways that you can get some more directional information about the size of the different market segments and the size of the market without having a huge market research budget. So you want to try to gather that information. And then you want to hone in on the segment that you're going to be working on with your team for the next period of time. So you want to say there's a whole bunch of segments that maybe they are part of your plan in the future, but they're not this next phase. So you can really focus in on this next phase of, who are you trying to reach? What problem of theirs are you trying to solve? What outcome are you driving to for them? And really clarify that customer segment for your team. And then finally, while you're while you're looking at the market, you also want to keep in mind, what is your competitive advantage? What is the thing that makes you go faster than the others, or what is the area where you can go faster than the others? And how do you make sure that that's in your strategy? Then you want to take a look at the product itself. I imagine many of you are working on existing products and you're trying to make growth plans for those products. So you've probably already got a product to look at. If you don't have a product to look at already, then you could be looking at the products in the market, in the space that you're in, or you could be looking at the ideas or the prototypes that you've got. But you want to take a look at that product and you want to gather whatever information you can. Are there reviews? Is there feedback you can look at? Can you check out what people have said online about a competitor's product? Or can you look at data from the actual usage of your product? How well are you using that data? Are you looking at cohorts? Are you understanding segmentation of that data based on different types of usage or power users versus new users? And do you see the differences in what they're doing with your product based on that? And then finally, you want to talk about feasibility. So if you're looking at this new product opportunity, or you're looking for a new product opportunity, and you've looked at the users and their pains, and you've looked at the market, and you've picked a segment, and then you've said, okay, here's where the product, what the product looks like in that segment, what the landscape looks like, then you want to look at feasibility. If you were to build things that you're thinking of, if you were to try to improve the areas where there are problems, how difficult is it for different opportunities you're looking at? So if you have, you want to do this for more than one opportunity so that you can compare and contrast all of these things across those opportunities, because you'll make better decisions if you're comparing and contrasting than if you're just making a go, no-go decision on one thing. So you want to do that. And then while you're doing that, you can talk to your engineers, and you don't want to be asking them how long it's going to take to build this. It's too early for that. But you want to be saying, is this something that is this similar to anything you've done before? How similar or dissimilar is it from things that you've built in the past? Those things that it is most similar to, how long did they take? You want to just get a general sense. Does it require entirely new systems? Does it require new skills that we don't have on our team? Or is this something that can work with existing systems? So you get a general directional sense of the feasibility. And when you take all of this together, I like to call it the OOMPH framework for users, market, product, and feasibility. And so that's my shorthand for remembering, what are the 4 things that I look at when I'm deciding whether an opportunity is more valuable or less valuable than another opportunity. Now, I went through this fairly quickly, but I did share a lot of detail on it. That said, the way that I always recommend people start this is just start with what you think you know. Don't go out gathering all the data. Start with what you think you know. Just have a session with some team members, work through it together, extract ideas from all the people who are close to this product or this user, and just get a sense of whether you all have the same picture for some of the opportunities that you've been talking about at your company. And when you're doing that, make sure you're covering these 4 things: users, market, product, feasibility. Once you've done that, and you have some idea of ones that you think are worth further exploration, then you need to go into experimentation. And once again, I like to share a quote from Richard Feynman: "A scientist is never certain. We absolutely must leave room for doubt, or there is no progress and there is no learning." So you can get to the point where you think, okay, we're pretty sure this is the stronger opportunity, but that's when experimentation comes in. And the way that I like to guide the experimentation to really guide it towards the risky decisions is to talk about those risks. Once you've talked about the risks, you can start to plan research around the riskiest areas. And now I'm going to share a little bit about how I look at research. So you have qualitative research and quantitative research. The qualitative research answers the why and the how. That's where you're asking questions, you're exploring and observing. The quantitative research answers how much and how many. That's where you're validating qualitative observations or gathering data from larger groups. You want to get a deeper understanding of unmet needs. So how do we do this in the context of product strategy versus user stories versus usability tests? How does this all fit together? I like to share this guide for a company that has layers of leadership, management, and teams. I think about the decision types that are being made at each of those levels. So at the leadership level, the decision types are about the product vision and the target market. And the testing methods for that are going to be quantitative and qualitative behavior-based research, competitive landscape, and market trends analysis. So those are some of the things that you can be doing at this top level, saying, where are we going and which market are we doing it for? At the next level down, or if you're in a smaller company, maybe the leadership and management are the same level, but at the management level, you are going to be making decisions about which pains you're solving for and which outcomes you're driving for each target market. Your methods for understanding that better include user interviews, competitive product reviews, user surveys, and usage data. So those are areas where you want to really be looking at, can we better understand how deep these pains are, how much work people are doing to try to solve those pains today, and really understand stories about their past experiences trying to solve those problems or drive those outcomes. And then finally, we have the team level. So at the team level, that's where you've got your product manager, your lead engineer, your designer, all working together. And at that point, they should have a pretty clear strategy laid out for them. The team should know where you're going. The team should know which pains you're solving for. And the team will have a say in what pains you're solving for. The level between management and teams is somewhat blended, but the team is really going to be focusing more at the solution level. So that's where you're really doing design research. That's the kind of research that you are really getting down to the nitty gritty of the interactions. You're getting down to the nitty gritty of the screens. What does the microcopy say? Things like that. And then you're also going to be doing usability testing. That's where you might be running A/B tests. You'll be doing all of these things. So one of the things that I talk a lot about is behavioral research, and I want to share a little bit about what that looks like. So when I say behavioral research, I mean research based on past behavior and research intended to try to understand what a customer's behavior would be with a new situation. So it all comes from behavioral customer interviews, but what does that mean? Well, you're going to have conversations with customers where you want to identify differences in habits and behavioral triggers. You want to identify differences in their pains and their challenges. And finally, you want to identify differences in their desired outcomes. These are things you do through conversation, through asking them about stories, through asking them why they try to solve one problem and not another. And that's what we call generative research. And then another kind of research that we can do here is evaluative research, where we're really exploring potential solutions and trying to understand which ones are more likely to fit for a particular customer. This kind of research is more useful than asking a customer what they think they would do, because a customer often might be wrong about what they would do. It's better to ask them what they did in the past. So you do all this evidence gathering, but then you still have another step to making evidence-based product decisions, because it's not enough to be right. You also have to be persuasive. So you might be talking to a boss who's kind of like this, doesn't have a lot of time for you, or the boss's boss. And how do you convince that person to come along with you? Well, one of the first things is you want to invite them to share their insights with you. So you want to understand their point of view, going back to that initial step of understanding what success looks like. You want to understand what they think the risks are, and you want to make sure that you're meeting their needs with the work that you're doing. But there's other things to it as well. One of my favorite techniques to help persuade is to use what I call the built learned planning demo. In the built learned planning demo, cat's back. In the built learned planning demo, you take an existing team's demo where teams are usually sharing what they've learned, sharing what they've built, and you add what they've learned. And then with what they've learned, you also add what they're planning to do next. That way, you're coaching the team over time, every sprint through this demo, that we're going to learn new things and it's going to affect our plans. And if you can also share this with your key stakeholders, then that's going to be really, really valuable, because if you drip new information to those key stakeholders over time and you have conversations with them and you learn how those impact them, you're more likely to convince and persuade those stakeholders if you are doing work that's changing the direction. So in summary, how do we make evidence-based product decisions? You need to be aware of common challenges and biases. You need to understand the company and the product goals. You can use an OOMPH product opportunity assessment to understand which opportunities are bigger. Then you get buy-in for your research by discussing the product risks. Continually gather just enough evidence to make good decisions and move forward. And share your research results regularly. And with that, I thank you all for listening to my talk. I hope this was helpful. If there's areas you want to know more about, send me a message and let me know. You can reach me online on Twitter, Medium, LinkedIn, or send me an email. Thank you.